Government Gay, Alex Reynolds series, Book 1. Writer, Fred Hunter, St. Martin's Press, New York, 1997. Narrator, Eric Arst. Dedicated for Joan Edwards, who told me so. Chapter 7. Victor Haycheck did not give me his matches. I didn't take them, and therefore I could not have them. And yet there they were, looking down at the little red object in my hand. I had a sudden, overwhelming sense of dread. I finally realized a little too late that I had been targeted for the right reasons, and it had somehow been more comforting to think it had been a mistake. I suddenly felt like a sitting duck, as if all the foreign agents in the country were about to converge on our utility room with machine guns drawn. I tore through the kitchen and living room, up the stairs, and ran into our bedroom. Peter had rolled over on top of the covers, but was still asleep. In my panic state, I barely noticed how cute he looked in his khaki boxers. I leaped on the bed and shook him. "Wake up!" I said in an intense whisper. "What?" he said by way of reply, his eyes opening to slits. "Wake up!" "What?" I knew I would get nowhere with him until he was able to put the T on the end of the word. So I shook his shoulders harder, bouncing him in the bed, and whispered even more loudly, "Wake up!" "What?" he said. "Success! I've got to show you something. Wake up!" "What is it? What time is it?" he said, turning over and pulling himself up to a half-sitting position with some effort. "It's almost 7:30. That's not important. Look!" I shoved the matchbook at him. Through his tired eyes, he managed to look at me as if I were completely out of my mind. "Yeah? This was in my pocket. The pocket of the pants I wore to the bar the other night." "Mm-hmm. It's the matchbook. The one that Victor Haycheck guy in the bar used to light my cigarette." Peter took the matchbook in his hand, turned it over, then said, "I thought you said he didn't give you anything." "He didn't. I don't know how it got there." "You mean he stuck that in your pocket and you didn't notice?" he said, curling his lip. "For God's sake, there was a zillion people in that bar. I was bumped and jostled every 2 seconds. I could have had sex with somebody without knowing it." "Yeah, right," said Peter, curling his lip a little more. "Oh, God," I said, sinking into the bed. "What a horrible thought." "What?" "I'd just like to think that if somebody was tooling around in my pants, I'd notice it. Now I know how people get their pockets picked." "Except something wasn't taken out of your pocket, something was put in it," said Peter pointedly, as he handed the matchbook back to me. "Did you open it?" "No." We both looked at the matchbook as if we were sure it was booby-trapped, and we hadn't a clue how to disarm it. Finally, Peter said, with a decided lack of confidence, "Go ahead and open it. It isn't going to bite." I let the matchbook lie flat in my left hand and stared at it after a moment of contemplation. After having decided that Peter was most likely right, and there wouldn't be a bomb inside something that was supposed to be carrying information, I reached down with my right thumb and flipped it open. I continued to stare down at the open matchbook, and Peter craned his neck over to see what we had found. Absolutely nothing. Half of the matches had been used, and the remaining ones looked perfectly normal. The cardboard casing was completely clear and unmarked. I don't know what I'd expected to find there, but I can admit with some embarrassment that after a lifetime of watching movies from the 40s, I really expected some code, or a series of indecipherable numbers or names or something on the inside of the cover. Even if it was just a phone number of a trick the guy had met at the goddamn bar, but nothing. That was a blow, but one thing was now clear. I hadn't noticed the matchbook being slipped into my pocket, but the Clay people could have seen him do it, so they weren't simply being insane when they said they saw him give it to me. I don't know why I found that comforting, since I was holding in my hand something that at least one man had been killed for. There was a knock on our bedroom door, and Mother called softly, "Boys, is everything all right?" You would have thought we were having a sleepover. Peter called, "Come in," and in she came. This time in a blue satin kimono with a silver dragon on each side of the chest, so they looked like demonic geckos clinging to her breasts. "I heard a lot of noise. Is everything all right?" I hopped off the bed and showed her what I'd found. She took it in her hand, stared at it, and turned it over with her thumb. A matchbook. Not a matchbook, I said with exasperation. The matchbook. Mother looked back down at the bright red object, her expression changing from perplexity to scorn. I must say, this isn't very impressive. Oh, for God's sake! I snapped, snatching it back from her. I don't give a damn how impressive it looks. This is what this cloak and dagger nonsense is all about. This is what Victor Hatchek was killed for. Huh? Well, what do you intend to do about it? We were just getting to that when you came in, said Peter as he climbed out of bed. He retrieved a rumpled t-shirt from the floor and pulled it on. I don't think it really wants discussion, said Mother pointedly. I think we need to get it out of the house. Now that we know we've got the damn thing, we can just call that Martin guy from the CIA and hand it over, said Peter. Right, Mother added, looking at me as if she were just daring me to disagree. No, I said. What? She looked aghast. No, I'm not calling anyone. I agree we need to get this thing out of the house, but I mean straight out. I'm not going to call Mr. Martin. I'm going to take the damn thing down to him. You don't know where he is, said Peter. He's in the CIA. He has to be in the federal building. Where the hell else would the CIA be? Mother screwed her face up into a question, her eyebrows arching a little points in their middles, and she said, Why not just call the man and have him come and get the thing? Because I don't want to take the chance, I replied. I looked down at the matchbook in my hand and thought for a moment, trying to get my ideas in order so I could put them clearly, then continued. Look, from what Martin said when I called him yesterday, it looked like everybody concerned was satisfied. At least would be satisfied that Haycheck hadn't passed anything to me, and we aren't involved. But who knows if our phone is tapped? I realize how paranoid this sounds, but what if our phone is tapped, or somebody's still watching the house or something? I don't want to take that chance. I don't want anybody outside the three of us, not even Martin, to know that I have this thing until I hand it over to him myself at his office, not here. Well, said Mother, a gleam in her eye that I could have sworn had some pride in it. If you're going on into the breach again, I'll be going with you. The hell you will, I said. She just smiled. In the end, I had to capitulate, because there is no arguing with Mother once her mind is made up. Peter had really wanted to call in sick or take the day off to come with us, but I nixed that idea, because no matter what we'd been through in the past couple of days, it seemed excessive for three of us to carry a matchbook to the federal building. However, he wouldn't let us go without first extracting our promise that we would call him the minute we got home. So Peter got dressed and headed off to work, and Mother and I headed for the Loop in a cab. The federal building is a tall, dark steel and glass structure located away at the south end of the Loop on Dearborn. It's another one of Chicago's famous Mies van der Rohe buildings and is supposed to express simplicity of design. But to me, it looks exactly like what it is, a big, ugly office building. We slipped through one of the revolving doors and went to a huge building directory. I was surprised to find that the CIA was not listed, but then when I gave it a little thought, it seemed to make sense, given how secretive they are. On the other hand, I couldn't imagine why you'd have an office if you don't want anyone to find it. Mother stopped a blue uniformed guard and asked where the office of the CIA was. The guard blinked her large eyes at Mother and turned her head sideways for a glance at me, as if she'd like to get a good eyeful of anyone who'd be looking for the CIA. She pointed us to the second bank of elevators and gave us the number of an office on the 17th floor. We rode in silence up to the appointed floor in an elevator full of people who I thought should look a hell of a lot more shifty than they did. I don't know why I thought the federal building should be filled with anything other than run-of-the-mill office workers, but somehow that's what I expected. The door slid open with a slight rattle on the 17th floor, and Mother and I stepped out and followed an endless sterile hallway around the interior of the building until we found the office number the guard had given us. We entered to find a middle-aged secretary seated behind an industrial gray metal desk, poring over a report of some sort. Her unnaturally blonde hair was piled up on her head in a way that I'm sure required a lethal dose of Aquanet. There were deep crow's feet sloping from the corners of her eyes, across her cheeks, and even deeper creases across the forehead. As we crossed the threshold, her head snapped up from the report and her eyes fastened on us. Her eyes were large, brown, and sunken, as if the years of taken in secrets had pushed them further back into her head. She stared at us as if she were logging our faces for future reference. "Yes," she said in a phlegmy voice. "We're here to see Mr. Martin, James Martin," I said. She paused and ran her eyes up and down the length of me in a way that made me feel as if my fly was open and little Alex had flopped out unawares. "You don't have an appointment?" "No," I said, trying to sound cagey, "but all you have to do is tell him my name and he'll see us." The woman sucked in the right corner of her mouth. "And your name would be?" "Alex Reynolds." Despite my attempt to sound forceful, my name sounded incredibly foolish to me at that particular point. The secretary stared at me in the face for a few more seconds. Then, without removing her eyes from mine, she picked up the receiver of the phone on her desk and pressed a button. I could hear a buzz from behind the door to the left of the desk. A man's voice clacked in her ear. "Yes. Sorry, sir. There is someone here to see you?" More clacking. "I know. He says you'll want to see him. He says his name is Alex Reynolds." There was no more clacking. That little moment of silence did my heart proud, because for that slight pause I thought, well, for once, someone's one up to CIA man. He's probably really surprised that we came here. The little silence was broken by a few words hastily babbled through the receiver into the secretary's ear. She smiled, and I half expected her to display fangs as she rose from her chair. She looked at Mother and said, "And your name would be?" "Jean Reynolds." She tried to sound sure of herself, but her widened eyes showed that she felt out of her element. The secretary swung open the door to the inner office, called in, "Jean and Alex Reynolds," and motioned for us to go in. As we passed into the inner office, the secretary closed the door behind us with a thud that put me in mind of prison bars closing in James Cagney movies. Both Mother and I stopped in our tracks, our mouths dropping open as the man rose to greet us, without moving from behind his desk. "I'm sorry, Mr. Reynolds," he said pleasantly, "but I don't believe I know you." It was not James Martin. A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.